Today, as you can see, Foundry's Got Talent. How many of you have watched that show, America's Got Talent? Anybody try to see who? Believe it or not, that show's been going for 20 years. Last week was their finale for their 20th year of that particular show. It's where people come from all over the country, as well as even other countries. Even though it's America's Got Talent, we got people even coming from other countries that compete, and they share their talent, whether it's singing, whether it's being a magician, whether it's anything and everything. The idea is whoever wins that show ends up winning $1 million. So last week, the individual that won that show walks away with $1 million. Sometimes the talents, though, however, of the people that share some are amazing, and others are quite unique, we might say, and do not have very wide appeal. So the judges give them what's called the exit buzzer. They just push their buzzer and a big giant red X shows up behind them, and then the person's no longer gonna move forward in the show. What I really enjoy about that show is it has a backstory, shares about what the person's gone through to get to the point where they're performing. One year there was a middle school janitor, some of you may remember that. He had a wonderful voice and was able to sing classic rock songs, like Kansas and Styx and Queen and all those. I mean, that real high vocal. And you look at him and you're like, I can't imagine that voice comes out of that individual. Another year, there was a young girl, like she must have been a preteen, I would think, but she was a ventriloquist. And she worked several puppets and she could sing. I mean, she was amazing. She ended up winning the show, actually. And this year, there was a British man. It's funny because I used to watch it almost every year, but haven't watched it. But as I got ready for this, I was turning the channel. I didn't even know it was running because I wasn't watching it this year. But it was the week before the finale, in other words, where everybody voted for whoever the winner was. So I was able to watch one of the guys. He was like a rapper, but he would get all of the audience to provide just phrases. So he put cards to the audience and he'd just randomly take them. And he would create a 5-minute rap just by using the words that everybody provided to him. It was amazing. He didn't win. He was one of the finalists. He was in the semifinals, him and a lady. But the woman who did win was a person that had been on the show in its very first season as a 10-year-old. And now here she is, a 30-year-old, and she's singing and performing. She just happened to be pregnant as well and all that kind of stuff. So again, the backstory is really what's interesting about that. But what that shows you, though, is that everyone has some form or talent or ability or gift that we're good at and that we enjoy doing. We may share this with others to bless them, or we may just enjoy doing it for our own well-being. There's a parable that most of you are familiar with in Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30, where Jesus taught his followers related to God's expectations when he gave gifts to each of us. This is commonly known as the parable of the talents, and that's where I got the title from, the Foundry's Got Talent. The purpose of this parable is for emphasizing faithful stewardship and the consequences of using those gifts, those talents, those things that God has given us. Jesus shared this parable near the end of his earthly ministry as part of his teaching related to the coming destruction of Jerusalem and the kingdom of heaven, that it was at hand, that it was going to be executed, and the importance of being ready when Christ returned. So you find that kind of strange. The backdrop to this parable is he's talking about the coming destruction of Jerusalem and the second coming, and as well as the church being established, that kingdom of heaven be established. So the story has 4 major components. The first is the master, which is Jesus. The second is the servants, which are those of us who are believers, Christians. A third component is the talents, which essentially is our gifts, our abilities, the things that God has given to each of us. And then the last component is the expected rewards of the master when he returns, because the master did come back eventually. And when he did come back, he asked the servants to give an accounting of what they did with what he gave them. So those are the things we're going to look at today in this parable of the talents. I don't have the teaching monitor here, but the scriptures will be up here in the back when we read them. So let's take a look at that very first portion of Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 and 15. It says, for it, and it is what he's referring to is the kingdom of heaven, because the verses just prior to verse 14, verses 1 through 13, was the parable of the 10 virgins who were going to a wedding and needed oil and that kind of stuff. So he follows that story with this one on the parable of the talents. And in the very first verse, verse 1, he says, for the kingdom of heaven can be compared to 10 virgins. And so now in verse 14, he's saying, for the kingdom of heaven, for it, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a man who went about on a journey, who called his own servants and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability, and he went on his journey. So here's this story is about Jesus. He's saying, I'm giving all these abilities, these talents and gifts to all of you, and I'm going on a journey, okay? So Jesus describes himself as the master. He entrusts his possessions. In the NIV, I think it says bag of gold. He gives a bag of gold or a talent to each of these servants. When we talk about talents, I want you to think of 3 things. So I'll be continuing to use the word talent, but when it comes to talents, I want you to think about spiritual gifts. The talents can be a spiritual gift that you've been given. It can be your natural ability. Some of you are good at sports. Some of you are good at being a musician. Those are natural abilities that we've honed and developed over time. Or a third aspect of talent is that financial aspect, physical possessions and finances. God has given each of us all of that. And that's what I want you to think of every time we use that word talent. Think about spiritual gifts, natural abilities, our possessions, and our finances. He gave all that to his servants, us as Christians, and before he went on a long journey. That's Jesus saying, I'm leaving this earth. I'm leaving this earth. I'm going to be gone for a long time, but I'm entrusting you with all these things that I'm giving you. It's a normal activity for a supervisor or a boss to leave and put the workers in charge, right? I mean, we're all familiar with that. When our supervisor went on a vacation or went out of town, they said, I'm assigning so-and-so to be this. I'm expecting you to do this. By the time I get back, have it all done, right? So that's a normal thing. However, in the sake of Jesus giving us these things and entrusting it to us, he's going to come back and he's going to give an accounting, but all those things all along belong to him. We're just stewards. We're to be the caretakers of those things. We're to do something with the things that he's given us, but they all still belong to God. And so those are things that when we're entrusted with these things, we've got to be faithful to them. We're simply stewards of these things that he entrusts to each of us. So how did he distribute them? In verse 15, Jesus gives differing amounts to each servant. One servant he gave 5 talents, one 2 talents, and the third servant he only gave 1 talent. Again, the talent is in the story is like a bag of money, it's a sum of money, but in the application context for us and for today's message, it represents all God entrusts to us. As I said, talents can be spiritual gifts, natural abilities, physical possessions and finances, all given to us by God. We all know everything we are and have belongs to God. That's something that most of us would say, yeah, that's pretty straightforward. I understand that belongs to God. But sometimes we take the things that God has given us and we think they belong to us. And we say, no, that's mine. That's my money. That's my gift. I'm not sharing with anyone. No, if they want to come see me, they have to pay. You know, whatever it is, we don't recognize and say that belongs to God, but it does. So the distribution, when it was given to each of us, whether it's a 5 talent or a 2 talent or 1 talent, that distribution, it says, was according to our abilities. God gave to each of us according to our abilities. Everyone has different talents. Everyone has different finances. Everyone has different natural abilities. Everyone has different spiritual gifts. So we want to encourage everyone who has a gift or ability to use it for the glory of God. That's what he entrusted them to us for, is to use them to his glory, not for our own selfish well-being, not just so we would enjoy it or appreciate it or have it. It's to glorify God. I love this next verse I want to share with you, Romans chapter 12, verses 6 through 8, because it explains the distribution method. It says, we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it's serving, serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it's to encourage, then give people encouragement. If it's giving, then give generously. If it's to lead, do it diligently. If it's to show mercy, do that cheerfully. So there's the distribution. You see that laundry list? That's not all inclusive naturally, but each one of those things demonstrate a gift, a spiritual gift, a natural ability. Even talked about finances and giving. All of those things are given and entrusted to us by the Master. God blesses us with amazing gifts. As you look at that list, you can see that God gave each of us abilities and tools to serve him. No two people are alike. Everyone born into the world comes with gifts unlike those of any other. You may have less talents or abilities or finances than someone. You may have more. But every individual is made in the image of God and is the possessor of unique endowment that he has left to you. Since all the gifts come from God, we know that the distribution must have been fair. It was equitable, and it was made based on the varying abilities of you. Having made us all equal recipients would have been a gross injustice. Some of you have 5 talents, and some of you have 2 talents, and some have 1 talent. That's fine because God gave them to you based on your ability. But if he was to give 5 talents to a 1 talent ability person, that person would be completely overwhelmed. And the same goes for if you only gave 1 thing to a person who has the capability to do 5 things, then that person's going to be bored. They're going to say, I wish I had more to do. But God knew what we needed. He knew how we could be challenged because he knows us intimately and equips each of us uniquely with the gifts that you possess currently. And he never asks us to steward more than what he has given us. We've all been in school, and we've had school teachers who give us a project and say, you're assigned with this group of people. You guys divide out your work and get the project done. So we're each given a different role in the group project. Not everyone receives the same task, but each is trusted to contribute according to their strengths. The success of that project depends on each student fulfilling their part. So think about what talents has God entrusted specifically to you, and what part or role can you play in this group project we call the Foundry Church? The next part of the scriptures in verses 16 through 18, after the master gave the talents to the individuals, what did they do? It says immediately the one who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and gained 5 more talents. In the same manner, the one who had received 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who received the 1 talent went away, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. Notice that 5-talent servant immediately invested and was able to earn 5 more. They couldn't wait to use what had been given to them. They were excited. They had a desire to serve. And because they were excited and had a desire, they got results. The 2-talent servant was the same way, used the same approach, had the same attitude. And it demonstrates it's not the quantity of gifts and talents that each of you possess. It's but what you do with what you've been given. The 1-talent servant demonstrated that they had a gift. It was given to them by the master. But what did they decide to do with it? They buried it. They allowed fear to limit their potential to serve and glorify God. You know, fear can keep us from doing great and wonderful things. We must use faith rather than fear. An active faith leads to multiplication. Fear and passivity result in stagnation. Faithfulness is not the quantity of talents, but a willingness to engage and invest. Here's a self-assessment question. Are we maximizing what God has given to us? Or are we hiding it due to a fear or an insecurity that we have? Once again, if a musician has a gift but keeps it hidden, they never play or they never sing because they're fearful of criticism or someone not liking what they're doing. Whereas a musician who shares their music ends up bringing joy and inspiration to the entire community. What are you doing with your gift, your talents, your finances? Are you blessing others with those, or are you keeping it all to yourself? Are you hiding it out of some fear or anxiety? We need to live by faith rather than live by fear. So what happens when the master returns? Because each of these servants had gifts, talents, abilities, finances. What did they do with it? The master comes back and wants to know. So in verses 19 through 23, it says, now after a long time, the master of those servants, notice a long time before the master comes back. We said it was Jesus. He said, I'm going away on a long journey. But now it says a long time passes and the master comes back. He settled accounts with his servants. The one who had received the 5 talents came up and brought 5 more talents, saying, Master, you entrusted 5 talents to me. See, I've gained 5 more talents. What does this master say to him? Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of the master. The second one comes. Also, the one who had received the 2 talents came up and said, Master, you entrusted 2 talents to me. See, I've gained 2 more talents. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. So both the 5 talent and the 2 talent were excited for the master to come back. They had done something very good with the things that the master had entrusted to them, and they were excited to share those things and to tell the master, this is what I've done. Jesus has gone on a journey. He's going to be gone a long time. It's been over 2,000 years, nearly 2,000 years since he was crucified and died, but he did say he will return. The master says, I am returning. This story shows he did return. And that promise that he gave to us, that he will return, also shows us that he's going to ask us to give an accounting of how did you use what I entrusted to you? How'd you use your spiritual gifts? How'd you use those natural abilities? How'd you use the physical possessions and the finances that I entrusted to you? Each of us individually will have to give an account of how we use those gifts we were given. The 5 talent had to give an account individually, what'd you do with the 5? The 2 talent had to give an account, what'd you do with the 2? Each of us will individually have to tell Jesus, this is what we did. It's not like that group project in school where you could just rely on the smart folks to help you get a good grade. Y'all know what I'm talking about. The rewards. Notice the 2 servants who invested their talents are both commended with well done, good and faithful servant. The commendation is identical despite the differing amounts. So regardless of whether you're a 5 talent, 2 talent, or even a 1 talent, the reward will be the same. All that's expected is that you do well with the things that you've been entrusted. Therefore, this indicates not just the quantity of your talents or the achievements, it's the fact that you determined and are faithful to use those to the glory of God, for Jesus, who is your master. Faithful servants are entrusted with even more. and they're invited into the master's joy. Two benefits of using the things that you've been entrusted. Not only are you going to have joy in using your gifts and talents and be excited about it, but the reward is that you'll be entering into the master's joy. God celebrates faithfulness and the heart behind our stewardship, not the size of our results. One person volunteers to organize a big event at church, and another person may pray for people in the privacy of their home, but they're both using their talents for the glory and serving God. Let's take a look at the third servant, the one that took the talent that was entrusted to them, but hid it. In verses 24 through 30, let's just read the first verses 24 and 25. And the one also who had received the one talent came up and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid, and I went away and hid your talent in the ground. But see, you have back what is yours. The servant made an excuse. It does not indicate that the one-talent servants are bound to fail. So if you're a one-talent person, you're not bound to fail. It just says, what are you going to do with no matter how many talents God has entrusted you with? What are you going to do with it, whether it's 1, 2, or 5? What are you planning to do with it? So it happened to any of the servants. The 2-talent, the 5-talent could have went and hid theirs as well and came back and said the same thing that the 1-talent. So don't think that because I only have 1 talent, I'm not usable. No, that's not what the story is about. The servant was motivated by fear and a distorted view of the master. They claimed that the master was a hard man, which meant, Jesus, I knew you had expectations for me to use what you entrusted to me, so I was afraid. The servant tried to blame the master. The reason I didn't use my gift, my talent, my finances, was because I knew you were a tough guy, and I was afraid. We like to use God as our excuse many times, but God has expectations that we will obey him and that we will serve him and that we will bless others with our talents, our spiritual gifts, our natural abilities, our physical possessions and finances that he has given to each of us. Failure came due to the servant hiding the talent. That is essentially shutting up a gift from the active service of the master. Some of you have so much to offer but are afraid or just waiting to be asked. Notice the servant here didn't do anything against the master, but it was the servant didn't do anything for the master. And so I'm sure each of you recognize, I have some gifts, I have some talents, but I haven't used it for the glory of the master for whatever reason. You're not going against Jesus by not doing it, but you're not doing it for him if you don't allow those talents and gifts to be in service to him. Let's read verse 26 and 28. What does the master say to the 1-talent guy who hid their talent? His master answered and said to him, You wicked, lazy slave. You knew that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival I would have received my money back with interest. Therefore, take away the talent from him, give it to the one who has 10 talents. Wow. This guy knew the master was a hard man, right? And this demonstrates it. The master rebuked the servant, not for a lack of ability, but for a lack of effort. We do not like to fail, right? We don't like it when someone we have tasked to do something lets us down or fails to do it. The master is expressing the same frustration. God provides us with all we need to succeed, but we must make the effort to use those talents he has provided to each of us. We have to make the effort to use those talents. They've already been given to each of us. We all have any number of talents, any number of spiritual gifts, any numbers of natural abilities, any numbers of finances or possessions in our bank account. What are the consequences? Verse 29 and 30, it says, "For to everyone who has, more shall be given." He took that 1 talent and he gave it to the 10-talent guy. You're like, did that guy have enough? But that's the way Jesus rewards those who do his will and utilize the gifts that he's given us. He says, "For everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. Throw out the worthless slave into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So what are the consequences? The first consequence, if we do not use our talents for the master, is a loss of what he's entrusted to us. God is not a robber, though. He doesn't steal back what is his. It belonged to him in the first place. What he's saying is that your neglected gifts will die. If you don't use your gifts, it will die. We all have examples of this. How many of you ever took a foreign language when you were in school? And then how many of you kept learning that language? Not many of us, right? Some of you did, and great job, that's what you did. Took what you've been entrusted and grew it and made it better. How about singing? How many of you sing in the shower? But not many of you would want to get up on stage and sing, right? Because we know our gift or our talent may not be here, but it could still be a blessing to people. You've heard that phrase, use it or lose it. That's what we're talking about. That's what Jesus is saying. If you don't use that gift I've been trusted to you, that talent, that spiritual gift, that natural ability, those finances, if you aren't blessing and glorifying me, I will take it away. Use it or lose it. The second consequence is worse. It's exclusion from the master's joy. He said, cast them out. There'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Don't even belong here. That's a serious warning. Refusing to invest what God gives us is a rejection of the trust that he gave to us by giving us the gift, and it's an act of unbelief. You don't believe that God gave you that for a purpose? You don't believe God entrusted you with something for his glory? He's saying, I did. I gave you all of this stuff. It's amazing here at the Foundry Church because I think God has given us all gifts, abilities, finances, and he expects us to use them for his glory. Foundry's got talent. I see people volunteering to help in the cafe. I saw an amazing response from you all when we had the lead pastors come in. People were greeters, helping you go to this place, people getting the food out, people setting up tables, breaking down tables, participating with wonderful questions that come from insightful people that want to know where are we headed. The greeters that we have that come in each morning, those people that are ushers that help with the communion or stand at the prayer wall, the worship team that's up here, leading us in worship and helping us, those of you that sing in the audience, the Fix-It team that we'll have, and I'm sorry, I don't want to neglect the tech team too. These nice lights are put on me here so you can see me and the glare is not so bad on my bald head. Because of those wonderful tech people out there, right, that help us with this, we had a tech faux pas this morning where we weren't going to have a screen. So we had people that were working that and figured out a way to do it. We said, we're going to borrow the cord from that TV, Brian. You're not going to have a TV up here. I said, fine, I'd rather have the screen up here, especially when we play that video of our new lead pastor and his wife. So they made it work. That's using your gifts and your talents for the glory of God. How about the people that lead Bible studies in their homes? How about those of you that are giving and you're continuing to give, even though you don't see a lead pastor, you just got an elder up here that's working for free. You don't have to pay me. So you're like, I'm going to put some more of that money back in my pocket. No, you've continued to give because we still have expenses. And now we're going to bring on a lead pastor and his wife, and we're going to be paying them as well. We still have expenses, but many of you have stepped up. Many of you have added additional tithes, and we really appreciate that because God has gifted you with that. So please continue to do those things. Maybe it's a kids program. Go back and help out in the kids program. And we haven't had a lot of kids lately, but when we do, we have people back that are ready to receive them. God tried to to pull a fast, or not God, but Satan tried to pull a fast one on us. Last week, we had someone that was assigned to be there, or maybe it was the week before. I can't remember when this actually happened. But the person we had assigned was in a car accident. So Satan tried to break that down and said, oh, your volunteer's not going to be there. But what we did, we just asked people, please have your kids come in to the service with you, okay? So we've been making it work, but we've had volunteers for this. We've had people volunteer come into the office and say, hey, how can I help in the office? We have a wonderful maintenance team. We have this individual named Randy who's come on to our staff and helping us out. And Randy, he said, I am gonna have that stained glass window up by Sunday. I said, Randy, it's Thursday. He said, I know, but I'm gonna make it happen. Because we had it in the lobby and we said, we're gonna try to move it up there. And I said, okay, get it done, but don't break it. And did y'all see how wonderful that stained glass window looks today? That's because people use their gifts, use their talents to make that happen. We've hung another cross up in that area as well. I don't know if you know it. It's like the old rugged cross kind of look to it. But each week we're trying to make some improvements, some changes, some things, and it takes gifts and talents and people that are willing to do that. Our gifts are overflowing here. Please keep investing for the Master. Please keep doing it. We love you all so much, and we thank you so much for that. Now, some of you are saying, well, the reason I haven't been sharing what I have is I'm not sure what my gift or my talent is. Well, we're going to help you with that. We have a gift assessments document that's out on the table there where you filled out your name tag. There's a gifts assessment. I know it's kind of thick, but it's a self-assessment that you can take home and you can fill out, and it will help you uncover and show you what is the gifts that God has blessed you with. So please pick that up on your way out. If we're out of the copies, because we made 25, assuming that maybe 25 people might need to do the gifts assessment. If it's not there, then let Brenda know, and she'll be out there, and you can just say, hey, I'd like to get a copy of that, and we'll send it to you. But I want you to ask yourself, what fears are holding me back from fully using my talents for God? How does your perception of God shape your willingness to serve? Fear and passivity are rooted in a misunderstanding of God's nature. Faith calls us to risk. Faith calls us to invest. Faith calls us to trust. We need to guard against complacency and fear and step out in faith even when things are uncertain. I'm so excited to share with you this journey that we've been on for a lead pastor search, because all through it, we've demonstrated faith. We've demonstrated patience. We've demonstrated, God, you work your plan. We are here to serve. And it's so exciting. It's the same thing with your gifts and your talents. We have to step out in faith, even though it might be frightening, even though it might be uncomfortable, even though we are uncertain how our gift or our talent might be received. We have 3 events coming up that we're sponsoring, and we need lots of volunteers. We have our Fall Faith Friends and Fun Day on the 9th of November. We're gonna need individuals to help us man the little activities that people will participate in. We're gonna need people to bring food for the potluck, because we wanna have a good old-fashioned potluck, folks, right? We don't wanna have it catered and we don't have to do anything. We wanna share in some of your wonderful dishes, and I'm hoping, Beth, you bring that wonderful banana pudding that's made with those biscuits. What are those biscuits called? Not vanilla wafers, but she uses those biscottes. See, she said it, biscuit, oh my word. It's to die for. It's great. So we have a sign-up table that you can sign up and you can bring your favorite dish, the dish that you're well known for, whatever it is. That can be a help. You can sign up to help us with the activities. A second thing that we're undertaking is that we were called by Keith Elementary School and said, hey, I'm new to this, but in the past you guys have provided Thanksgiving dinners for some of our underprivileged families. We need help with 15 families. Do you think your church could do that? And of course, when we got this message, since I'm in the office every day with Doug and the other staff, it's like, I don't know, should we ask our church? Is that a lot to ask them? Because we're gonna have the thing on the 9th, and then we have the Thanksgiving. But it was like, God is asking us to serve. And so we're putting a list out there. If you think you can provide one of those meals, it may be a Publix gift card that you have to buy. It may be putting together the meal. Even if you can't buy one, maybe you'll be one of the individuals that once we buy the stuff, we put them in the baskets and take it to Keith. Maybe it'll be one of those things that you can do. There's any number of ways that you can serve, but we believe that God is entrusting that to us because she said, you guys were the only ones that helped last year along with a real estate company. And so it's like, I guess God wants us to help. So we're going to do that. Sign up list out there. The third thing coming in December is the angel tree. Each year we typically get names from among the community and stuff like that. And so what we decided this year was we want to focus on the needs of our family here at Foundry. So if you know a family member of yours that's going to need help because they've lost their job or their kids aren't going to have a Christmas because of whatever reason, put the name on that list. And if you have a neighbor, maybe you're aware of a neighbor that's going through some situations, and we're going to bless your neighbor. So those are the names that we want to put on our angel tree this year, and those are the names that you'll be taking and buying gifts for so that we can deliver them by the 14th of December. You know, there's lots of opportunity. The question is, who's going to do it? Who's going to do it? We're entrusting you. Jesus entrusted you. The Master gave you natural abilities, spiritual gifts, the finances, the possessions to be able to serve him faithfully. So I know that this church is going to step up. I just know it. I have faith, and I know you as individuals and people that you're going to serve the way God intends for you to serve. The parable of the talents calls each of us to an active, faithful stewardship of all God has entrusted to us. Faithfulness is the measure that God values. Multiplication is a natural fruit of trusting and obeying God. If you have 5 talents and you use those 5 talents, you're going to be blessed with more. What will you do with the talents that God has entrusted you? You know, God is generous and he entrusts us with his resources with the expectation that we will demonstrate fruitful stewardship. Faithfulness is rewarded with more responsibilities and a deeper relationship to the Master. I encourage you, invest intentionally with your time, your skills, your finances, with relationships. Deploy all of them for the glory of God and for the good of others. The true reward then is entering into the joy of the Master. When you enter into the joy of the Master, you have an intimate, everlasting fellowship with him. You live with the expectancy of the Master's return. You know he's coming back. And when he comes back, you're going to be excited because you're going to be able to say, look at what I did with all the stuff that you gave me. You're going to be proud, right? I mean, when one of your children came and they said, I got an A in school in this particular course, they were excited. They wanted to tell you about it, and you were joyful with them. We need to live with the expectancy that Jesus will return, and we want to live with the hope of hearing that famous phrase that Jesus says, say it with me, well done, good and faithful servant. That's going to help motivate our choices, going to help us to use the gifts, the talents, abilities that we have for his glory. I want to leave you with one final scripture thought from 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. The scripture says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Each of you use whatever gift you've received to serve others and thereby glorify God. I want to transition now to communion, so I'm going to encourage the ushers to please make your way to the side. I want to share with you scripture from Isaiah chapter 53. Isaiah was written somewhere between 700 and 740 BC. So 700, let's just say 725 years before Christ was even born, this scripture was written. It says, "Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of parched ground. He has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And like one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening of our well-being fell upon him, and by his scourging we are healed. All of us like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, but the Lord has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to slaughter, like a sheep that is silent before its shearers, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, for the transgression of my people to whom the stroke was due, his grave was assigned with wicked men, yet he was with a rich man in his death. Because he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth. But the Lord was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief. If he would render himself as a guilt offering, he will see his offspring, he will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of the Lord will prosper in his hand. As a result of the anguish of his soul, he will see it and be satisfied. By his knowledge, the righteous one, my servant, will justify the many, as he will bear their iniquities. Therefore, I will allot him a portion with the great, and he will divide the booty with the strong, because he poured out himself to death and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he himself bore the sin of many and interceded for the transgressors. 725 some odd years before Jesus came to die on that cross, before he was even born, God had the plan to give Jesus' life on our behalf. That's what we celebrate today as we take this communion, a remembrance of that sacrifice, that he bore the iniquities for all of us, that he now lives forever and asks us to do this in remembrance of me. So let us pray, and then we'll invite you all to go and there'll be 2 cups. One has a bread in it, one has the juice. Just take that, come back to your seat, take it at your leisure, and focus on this great, wonderful promise that God gave us 725 years even before Jesus came.